IVM.
Hello and welcome to a brand new episode of the Musafir Stories, India's very own travel podcast, where each week we share the journey of travelers in their own words and relive their experiences with you, our listeners.
Hey guys, welcome to a brand new episode of the Musafir Stories. Hope you're all well and keeping safe. On the podcast today, we speak with Ananya Vats, a product manager at Google Maps and an avid traveler, as she takes us to the Queen of Hill Stations, as this place is popularly known. So let's hop onto the episode and find out more. So with that introduction, we'd love to welcome Ananya Vats, a product manager and a traveler to the Musafir Stories. Ananya, thank you so much for being on the Musafir Stories and welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much. I'm pretty excited to be here.
Well, thank you, Ananya. Thank you for reaching out, and we're glad to host you on the podcast today. But the intro I did earlier was pretty short and concise. So why don't you speak a little bit more about yourself and your likes?
Sure. So currently I'm based in Bangalore. It's been a couple of years here and I'm a product manager at Google Maps. Apart from that, I love to read. I do write, do a couple of art forms also. And of course, I travel. Actually, pandemic has been quite a pivotal moment because I started doing a lot of long travels and solo vacations. So over the past 4 years, I've been to around 20 Indian states. I've traveled 18 countries, and I manage all the trips with a full-time job. So there's a lot of sort of travel planning and researching that goes into it. I think that's about me.
Yeah, wonderful. And I'm sure your job also acts as a welcome distraction. Looking at maps all day, you tend to get distracted. I'm just joking, but I could help but bring up that you work at Google Maps. So I always love just looking at maps and zooming in and zooming out of places, trying to figure out where or what orientation some places are. But yeah, clearly you're very, very multi-talented, and I'm glad that the silver lining of the pandemic, which was a difficult time for all of us, has been that you've been able to focus a lot more on travel and discover new places and countries. I don't know, you mentioned you've heard of the podcast before, so you kind of know the drill, right? We basically focus on a place, the experience of visiting there, things to do, see, experience, eat, meet, right? All of that. So with that in mind, where are you taking us and our listeners to today?
Sure, yeah. So I'm basically taking to a really, really beautiful place near Bangalore. It's famous for its flowers and greeneries and mountains. We're going to Kodaikanal. It's clearly my favorite for a weekend trip from Bangalore. It's something which could be covered in a short number of days, and then you kind of get the best of nature.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we used to boast about Bangalore having good weather, but I know these days Bangalore also gets pretty hot. So yeah, it's a perfect getaway for a weekend because Kodai has usually good weather around the year, or at least cooler weather around the year. So I'm glad that you did get a chance to experience the hill station, also referred to as the Princess of Hills, right? Can you tell a little bit more about how to get there and when is a good time to visit?
Sure. So the best time to go is obviously monsoons. Like everything is super green and you see like mist on the roads. It's quite dreamy. And I think that's kind of applicable for whole South India. But then it's also pretty nice in winters. I personally have visited twice. Once in May when it was very green, and once in March when I would not recommend anyone to go like before monsoons because almost it's quite dry and you see half the beauty that Kodaikanal has. So I would say monsoons, autumn, winters would be the best time. It's quite close to Bangalore, as I mentioned. So you can take like a overnight bus, or you can even drive down. Takes around 8 to 9 hours. You can go on bike also, if because the mountains are really nice. Um, And apart from that, there are airports like Madurai, Coimbatore nearby. So in case you're coming from other places, from there you can take a cab and reach Kodai.
Yeah, brilliant. Firstly, thank you for setting that geographical orientation for us, as well as how and when to visit. Right, that part of it. Can you also shed some light just in terms of this hill station, how it came about, like the history tag to it?
Sure, sure. So, like a lot of hill stations, I think Ooty is also one of them. This was basically set up by Britishers who were looking to, escape to a more cooler place. And at that time, mostly Mysore was the center, which was quite hot. So, Kodaikanal was established by Britishers around 1800s, and that is something that you can even see now in all the old buildings, the architecture. It's very colonial in nature. Even the names of places, like the famous spots in Kodaikanal, have the whole colonial nomenclature to it. It also kind of ensures that it's very well planned in the sense that it's quite green. There are lots of gardens and flowers, which is my favorite part of the Kodaikanal, actually, the sheer amount of flowers and colors that you see there.
Yeah, absolutely. And in even in literal terms, the term Kodaikanal in Tamil means the gift of the forest, right? It loosely translates to that. So yeah, it's very lush green and as a part of the Nilgiri ranges. So really, really some beautiful and scenic sights along with the good weather to experience while you're visiting here. Now, you did mention about the British connection, so thank you for covering off that too, so we know what to expect. In terms of the itinerary itself, you did mention that it's a good weekend type of a getaway, and even historically, it's been like I don't know, from the times of my parents and that generation, like a honeymoon destination, right? That's how it's been considered. But in your case, how long was your itinerary for?
Yes, so it was actually a little spontaneous. I went for a long weekend, which is 3 days with my friends, and we like went by bus, and we were supposed to return on Monday. But then I really liked the place, and I had my laptop with me, so I just extended my stay till Sunday. And I took a hostel and I stayed there. My friends actually came back, but since I had the remote work option, I stretched my visit and like just stayed there. But I think Kodaikanal in general could be covered properly in 3 days. But then, as they say, if you really want to experience a place, even a month is a short time to visit. So you can stay for as long as you want.
Yeah, absolutely. And God bless those companies that give that bit of freedom to work remotely so that there is flexibility around planning our tours as well. Wonderful. So let's jump into your itinerary itself and see the type of things and places and experiences you had. Where do you want to kick this off with, just in terms of taking us around?
I'll start with the first 3 day trip, which was well planned by me and my friends. We actually stayed at a place called Waterfalls. It's a couple of kilometers apart from the Kodaikanal main city. And the main reason to choose Waterfalls was the greenery, because you're kind of in the middle of the hills. It's again very accessible from the bus station. You can just take an auto and reach it. And Waterfalls has this really famous point, which is called Dolphin's Nose. It's actually a short trek of around 1.5 hours each, and it's very pretty. Like as I said, there's greenery all around. It's not that difficult, so that is where we started. So we reached around early morning. We went to our stay, we kept our bags, and then we went for the trek straight away. We had a lot of fun, came back, and there's this cafe called Altaf's Cafe. It's right at the start of the Dolphin's Nose. Very nice views, great food. So we just had lunch there. And then we went around and walked to explore some of the famous viewpoints and waterfalls. So if
Okay.
you're new to the place, there are a plenty of cab services available which cover a certain number of points. It's one of the easiest way to explore the town, because they would have like the village tour or the waterfalls tours and all, and you can actually discuss the places that you want to visit, and they'll cover that in a day or half a day depending on how much time do you have. So we did that. But you can also do that by yourself, like if you have your own car or bike, you can take that and explore the places. A lot of them are within a certain route, so it could take like certain number of hours. But yeah, that's like one of a good option that's available in Kodai.
Yeah, for sure. And I'm assuming you took the former, right? You basically hired a cab for the period. Is that what you did?
Yes, yes. So for the first day, we took a half a day tour. So we took a cab driver, and he basically showed us some waterfalls which were near the Watercanal. So there was this Silver Cascade waterfall, and I think Beer Shola waterfall. We visited those waterfalls, and then we came back because again it was the first day. We just wanted to relax a little. The second day we had a full day tour which covered the main Mannavanur lake, the Pambar village viewpoints, the pine forest. Uh, so we basically again we can spend as much time as we want at each place. It's quite flexible. So we ended up spending a lot of time in Manavur Lake. It's one of my, I would say, favorite places in this town. There's also like a coracle boat ride that you can go, and you can just sit around the lake and just enjoy the peace. I don't know if it was lack of tourist season, but we had the lake almost to ourselves. So it was quite a nice sunset that we watched, and we just chilled around the lake. And then it was like a full day cab thing that we took, and then we came back to our stay.
Okay. Yeah, let's just touch upon a couple of those points as well. Right. Starting with the Mannavanur Lake that you mentioned. This seems to be a little bit away from the city, right? It's not necessarily exactly in Pondi, right? At least that's what I came across.
Yes, it's a little away from the main center of Kodai.
Yeah.
So that is why I basically talked about the cab service. So what they
Yeah.
do is they basically do all the points which are close to each other together. So Manavur Lake also has another lake in front which is called Kookal Lake, and they're all a couple of hours away from the city center. So basically, when you start from Kodaikanal city center, and the city center is very easy to understand. There's a Kodai Lake, which is a
Yeah.
star-shaped lake. That's the center of the Kodaikanal. So you start from there, and then you move in a certain direction, and there are points on the way. So for us, it was Pomrai Village Point, which is basically a very colorful village. You see it from, you can click pictures and all. Then we went to the Lake Viewpoint. Lake Viewpoint is another place at the top. From there, you can obviously see the lake, but also the greenery all around. And then we drove down to the lake itself. After that, there was the Kookal Lake, which is a little ahead of the lake, and then we returned back to Kodai. So these all the places, and Pine Forest was also on the way. So these are the places which were kind of clubbed together. And then if you want to visit the city, there's like another tour, because that's like in a different direction.
Yeah. Yeah, but like you mentioned, the Mannavanur Lake is very, very picturesque and pristine, and glad that you one got to do the coracle of the boat ride, and you also had it pretty much for yourself, right? Given the time of the year you were visiting, so that's great. But I also read that there's other options in case somebody's interested in zip lining. I don't know if those are open around the year, but there's definitely options around there. And this other lake, right, Kookal Lake, again, probably something that depends on when you're visiting, but it has like a beautiful spread of water lilies across. So that way, that lake too, it's probably a little more offbeat compared to the Mannavanur Lake, but definitely something worthwhile and something you could visit. And a couple of other places you mentioned, right? Even the pine forest. This is a very, very popular, and I would say a very touristy spot, because pretty much everybody makes a spot here, and it's been a part of a lot of the movie locations as well, right? Like a lot of movies do get to tend or tend to be shot here, so very likely that you won't miss out on this, and especially if you're taking one of these uh, packages for a day, like a cab taking you around for a day. It's one of the spots that will definitely be on the itinerary. So I'm glad that you got to enjoy all of these, and given that it's also the right time of the year, that everything is nice and green, I'm sure everything was just amplified in terms of beauty. And I just want to go
Yes,
back to
yes.
the first point as well. You mentioned where you started off your trip with the Dolphin snows, right? It's a small hike, right? If I'm not wrong, Ananya, from like whatever the trail point or the trailhead you begin, there's a little hike to reach to this basically hill top, you could say, that's in the shape of a dolphin's nose, correct?
Yes, yes. So it's around 1.5 hours one side, and we actually stayed very close to Dolphin's nose. So it's in Watercanal only, and our stay was like right across the road from where the
It,
trek started. So that is why it was the first thing we did, and quite nice. Like you get a lot of. Again, most of the hikes are nice because you're surrounded by trees on all sides. But it's also like in terms of well worth the amount of time you spend. It's prettier in peak monsoons. That's what I heard. But again, even during May, June, it's very nice.
yeah, absolutely. And it's not a very strenuous trek. Yeah, it's definitely doable.
Yes, yes, it's definitely doable. Also, there are a lot of Maggie and tea points along the way. So you can, it's quite commercial. It's not like a offbeat thing at all. But that does not take away the beauty of the place. So you can, stop and have Maggie, tea. So because we just came like from a overnight bus, we actually stopped for breakfast. Like we had Maggie and tea on the way, and then we moved ahead. So you can definitely, take pauses, and even people with, who are not very fit can actually do this trek. It's not, strenuous at all.
Okay, yeah, wonderful. Glad that this is very accessible and doable. So, great way to kick off your day. And also, can you talk a little bit more about the waterfalls that you made stops at? Which ones were these again? And like, what type of were they like unique in their own sense, or were they more similar to each other? Can you speak a little bit to those, please?
Yes, so because it was not monsoons, the waterfalls were actually not very full. So one was the Beer Shola waterfall, which is basically so it was supposed to be a really really high volume waterfall, but what we saw was kind of like a stream. And the second one was Silver Cascade. As the name says, it was basically a layered waterfall. So it did look pretty. But again, I would recommend to keep waterfalls as a highlight if you visit in monsoons. And otherwise, there are other places that you can spend, more time on. So for us, waterfalls was not the highlight of the trip. Yeah, apart from that, I
Okay.
think there were other way prettier places. But it totally
Okay.
depends on the time that you visit.
Okay. And there's also this other, I don't know if it's the Silver Cascade or something close by, the Pambar waterfalls or the Liril falls, like they refer to, right? It became really popular after Liril shot one of their ads featuring the models and the famous little theme song, right? Or the I guess this is the jingle or whatever that is called. They shot that, and since then it's been very popular. So it's likely that if you're visiting, and especially if you're taking these cab rides, they'll take you to those depending on the time of the year. But yeah, given the hills and how scenic these Western Ghats are, waterfalls are definitely part of the overall places that you do come across, and there's so many of them that are unnamed as well, I'm sure, but some of the popular ones, and you already mentioned here, you could definitely make sure to cover those off as well, given the time of the year you're visiting, right? Some of them are very beautiful and cascading, so make sure to visit here as well. But yeah, it looks like a pretty packed start to the itinerary. You start off with a hike to the Dolphin's nose, which in itself is, I think it'll take a little bit of time, right? If it's especially an hour and a half each way. And you also covered off other places like the Mannavanur Lake, the Kookal Lake. And what was the village viewpoint? Was that the, sorry, village viewpoint or the lake viewpoint that you
So
mentioned, Anya?
yeah, it's the Pambar village viewpoint. So Pambar is a colorful village. So the basically houses are of different color, and when you look from top, it looks really beautiful because it's surrounded by all the greenery, and then you have those little colorful villages. Now they also have a really nice hostel in the with the Pomrai village viewpoint. So I would definitely want to kind of revisit the place. But what we did was we basically stopped at the viewpoint and we clicked pictures. It's a really nice place to just stop for a while and look.
Okay, yeah, I did see that this is one of the upcoming places to, like, when not, for somebody not preferring to be in the midst of the city itself, right? It can be pretty crowded, and especially if it's a touristy season, it can be like a lot of people visiting. So Pumbrai or Pombrai, when I'm not very familiar with the pronunciation, but this is a village that has a few good options to stay, and also is a little cut off, so that way you don't necessarily see the same sort of tourist inflow, although it's becoming more and more popular. And yeah, like Ananya mentioned, the view of the village is what is one of the big takeaways here. It's a beautiful view, especially from up top, from that viewpoint that Ananya is mentioning. If you look at it, it's a lot of old sloped tile houses, right? So colorful houses, and you could get a good view of that, surrounded by a lot of these paddy or paddy fields or whatever the farming is done around. So it's really a brilliant view to just look and appreciate. And I understand, even I don't know if you had a chance to go into the village, Ananya, or was it more around the viewpoint that you spent time at?
We just saw the viewpoint. I think so. Village was basically not the part of the package, but it is
Right.
possible to go to the village. I don't think they have stay options. Might have changed in like the last year or so, but you can still like visit the village if you want. There were also some temples on the way, which
Right.
our cab driver told us about. So that's also like one option that could be explored. So Pombrai village point is basically on the way from Kodaikanal city to the Mannavanur lake.
Yeah.
So you would kind of have that on the way itself.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, if it's of interest, you could definitely make a stopover, or if you're traveling by yourself, you could perhaps venture a little bit into the village as well. Here, it's probably the same temple that you made reference to. It's called the Kolantai Velapar Temple. It's apparently very popular in the region, and very revered. And then I also hear the garlic from this village is very, very popular. So yeah, if something you're looking to pick up as well when you're visiting, that might be one of the things. But yeah, overall, just the view of the village itself is the main takeaway, and especially if you're traveling onto Mannavanur Lake, make sure to take a quick pit stop here. Awesome. So, given that almost like this part of the circuit, right, you have covered, and was this in the first day and a half, or first couple of days, or was it mostly the first day?
First 2 days.
First 2 days, right?
So the first day it was the dolphin's nose and the waterfalls, and second day we did the viewpoint and the lake.
Okay, brilliant. So we're next to Ananya once you've covered off like this circuit, which is mostly to the west, I believe, from the city. But yeah, once you've covered the circuit,
Yes.
where are you headed to?
The third day we actually wanted to take it a little light, so we mostly explored the city itself. There's this really beautiful walkway which is called Coker's Walk. It is a little crowded, but it's still very pretty. So you can, go either early morning or in the evening during sunset. And Coker's Walk is constructed like so. There's basically a path, and on the other side it's just hills. So there's obviously a railing so that nobody falls off. but you can see clouds floating by, and it's a beautiful view. It's around a kilometer or so, the stretch. And on
Hmm.
the other side, they have shops. So the shops could be, selling jewelry or little soft toys, or even some food stalls. So those shops are usually by localites. They have their own timings, but the walk itself is very pretty. I actually went for Coco's walk thrice. So
Mm.
I went for the first time with my friends, and then when I extended, I went like for two more times, just showing people around, and like it's really peaceful and really nice in the mornings. So we did that. After that, we did the Byron Park. It's a park in the middle of the city. It's very well maintained. There's a lot of local people in the park who are just, walking around. There were also kids who were just playing or practicing some, different gymnastics and stuff. It was quite interesting, and a good place to just, be in the nature and like read or something. So we spent some part of the afternoon there. Then we went to Guna Caves. So Guna Caves is something which is recently, it's kind of come again into like news. There's this movie which got released, which is called Majumal Boys. And I actually went to watch it because, Guna Caves were featured in the movie. So they have this, cavity, or basically a hole which is called Devil's Kitchen, and nobody knows the bottom of the hole. So Majapal Boys is inspired by a real story of a couple of Malayali boys going on a trip, and then one of them actually falls in the devil's kitchen hole, and how they rescue him, which was almost impossible mission. So although tourists are not allowed to go and see that, we can go till a certain point of the caves. So that's what we did. And
Yeah.
then there's this another viewpoint which is called Pillar Rock, which we saw. So the last day of our trip, or suppose so last day, we basically covered these viewpoints, and we explored some of the food places, and it was more on the lighter side.
Yeah, yeah. Manjumal Boys, right? Like you mentioned, it was released very recently, 2024 movie and Malayalam movie. So if somebody's looking to catch up on it, definitely you will get a good sense of because a lot of the shooting locations are in Kodaikanal, and it's based off of a true story. I don't know if you just mentioned that, but this happened. I don't know, sometime in the early 2000s, I think, where a group of friends went there, and one of them actually fell into that. Hole or a natural cave formation, and this basically the Guna caves or the Devil's Kitchen that you're mentioning, right? This is the space or the natural cave formation between these pillar rocks that you're mentioning, right? The viewpoint, and those, by the way, are also just absolutely stunning, right? It feels like it's one of from one of those Hollywood movie locations where, I don't know, Avatar or whatever you shoot, right? It's a really uh, cylindrical pillar type formations, and like a space between them kind of goes down. Natural cave formation is formed, and the name also, the original name given to it by the Britishers, I understand, was like Devil's Kitchen, and then a movie called as Guna was shot there in 1991, featuring Kamal Hassan, and then they became popular as Guna Caves, and now Manjumal Boys basically is another movie shot at the same location, covering like a real life event that happened where a group of friends go there, one of them falls down, and then there's a rescue operation that happens, and it's a really nice movie. I've seen the movie too. It's I think edge of your seat thriller type of a movie. So if you haven't checked it out, it's another way of getting a glimpse of not just Guna Caves but also of some spots in Kodaikanal. Right. So I'm glad that you got to visit these spots as well. Overall, yeah, it's just. Good space to visit, and even Guna caves, right? You don't even have to go too deep into the caves. Like just the approach to it, like those trees and their really interlocking root system or whatever that is, right? Ananya, I don't know if you came across all of those points. It's pretty interesting to visit even just beyond the caves.
Yes, yes, for sure. It's beautiful, and even the Pillar Rock viewpoint, which is quite nearby, it's also really pretty. Like you can just stop and stare at that for a while.
Yeah.
So I didn't obviously see the movie at that time, But yeah, it was quite an experience, and I loved the movie. It was quite thrilling, and also just having been in those places made it even
Yeah,
more special for me.
yeah, I'm sure. So I'm glad that you got to visit and enjoy some of these experiences as well. And the other couple of places you mentioned, right? The Cocos Walk and the Bryant Park, both of them have been basically named after some of the British officers who basically led the way in either setting them up or establishing them. Uh, the Cocos Walk, especially from a viewpoints perspective, it's brilliant. I mean, obviously, you have the full length of the place to walk about, which is like almost a kilometer that you mentioned. But even just some of the views you get from there, it's just absolutely breathtaking, right? And that's something I would definitely encourage you to visit as well. Given the wonderful walks, and on a good day you can catch a lot of the places like Dolphin Snows and some of the other close by viewpoints from this place, from the Cocos Walk. So something to definitely try out. And your Bryant Park is more on the lines of if you visited Ooty, right, the botanical gardens and stuff like that. It's very similar to that, with a lot of species or varieties of trees and flowers and plants. So that's also another just relaxing experience for if you're just looking to get around and explore the trees and the plants of the place. I think you've covered a bunch of things. Did you also want to touch upon, again, this is still your original planned itinerary, right? Anything else that you did touch upon during this time you want to cover off now, Ananya?
Uh, we did go shopping, and that was towards the end. So basically, my friends then took a bus and went, and I moved on to another hostel. But
Okay.
yeah, I think Kodai itself has a really, famous spices and chocolates, and the chocolates are really nice. So you can just go and like try a bunch of chocolates. They're also very cheap for the quality and the taste. So we basically roamed around the market. The market was mainly around Kodai Lake. So Kodai Lake is nice, not as I would say, green and isolated as the lakes that I mentioned. But it's still like good for boating and all around the lake. I think two sides of the lake there's this huge market that you can just walk around. There's shops selling all sorts of things, but the town is mainly famous for its spices and chocolates. So we got a bunch of that, and then I basically, my friend, I bid farewell to my friends who took the bus, and then I moved to another place. The city also, although it's quite crowded and there's a lot of say traffic jam around it, it also has a bunch of nice cafes and restaurants. So we explored some of those,
Okay.
and you would definitely kind of find good food in Kodai. And like, even if so, I'm a vegetarian, so even for vegetarians, there are plenty of good options. It is like usually smaller towns. There's an issue of getting good places. So Kodaikanal does not have that issue. There are plenty of options for whatever you want to do. So there's like Abby's Cafe, which has burgers and shakes. There was this Nia Streets that we went to. Then for South Indian, we went to this place. It's called Astoria. It's a huge sort of place where you get those tiffin style meals, and it was quite tasty. So we explored a bunch of those. I actually came from, because I was staying for like 4 or 5 more days, I came down to Kodai again to just try some of these places again and have food.
Yeah, absolutely. No dearth of options for, especially from a food perspective. And even the cafe you mentioned earlier, right? That's by Dolphin's Nose, Altaf's Cafe, right? That is
Altaf's Cafe.
also,
Yeah.
yeah, very, very popular, especially for your Mediterranean cuisine and burgers and falafels and the like, and sandwiches. I mean, while looking up for this episode, I came across like it also has a very interesting background of the owner, right, who set it up. He basically was a chap from Shimoga in Karnataka, and he like left home at a very early age, and he came across these Israeli tourists, right? A lot of Israeli tourists visit India every year, and he ran into them, and he traveled a bunch of places with them in the north, in Himachal, and all of that. And finally, he decided to settle back down closer to home and set up a cafe. So a lot of the offerings are the Mediterranean or falafel type of offerings are basically inspired by those travels. So pretty interesting, and yeah, like a very popular cafe, right? If you're in that region or in Waterfalls, you're very likely going to visit or run into this, or have somebody recommend you Altaf's Cafe, so make sure you visit there as well. But yeah, the bottom line is, in terms of food options, it's definitely quite a popular hub, so there's no dearth of types of food or cuisine available. So you could certainly rest assured, do not worry too much about the food options. And yeah, tell us a little bit more about the extended itinerary now, right? Beyond the, let's say, the touristy circuit, most people do cover off this, right? Some of the points you mentioned earlier, plus the points in and around the city, like the Kodaikanal Lake, etc. Where did you move to from here? And also, please share with us what kind of experiences you had here.
Sure, sure. So, Kodaikanal in general has a bunch of hostels and also like good homestays, Airbnbs. And my recommendation in general is to stay a little far from the city center, especially in places like Uti, Kodai, which was like constructed thinking a very small sort of area in mind. So I stayed around 4 5 kilometers away from the city center in a hostel. It was at top of a hill, so the views were really nice. And because I was staying alone, so like I prefer hostels because you get to meet other people. Although I did not travel that much in the extended stay, it was mainly walks around the hostel in the evening, and then I had office work from morning till evening.
Mm.
So mostly I was working and having conversations with people. So I met a bunch of really interesting people. So could I can that's when I came to know that it's famous among the bikers, because they were like biking groups who were coming there and staying for like 1 night, 2 nights, and those conversations were really interesting. During the next weekend, so I was supposed to come back by a bus, but because I made so many friends in the hostel itself, I actually came back with those people in their car. So we
Oh,
drove
okay.
back to Bangalore, and so I did come to the town twice during my stay there. It was only possible twice because I had like office work, and again, I just wanted to relax and not like explore the places. So, as I mentioned, I did Coker's Walk again. The first time we went in the evening, so it was quite a busy time with like all the shops open. The second time I did like a morning walk where the shops were still to open, so it was very peaceful and again like prettier. I also did Byron Park basically when I came to the town, and mainly explored the food scenes and the shopping scenes. So it's also famous for its woodwork. So we got some bunch of small, souvenirs which were for our home or friends. And there was this place called Cloud Street. I don't know if it's still open. So it was famous for its sizzlers, and we tried sizzlers. Again, like a bunch of friends, which was just newly made. So we just kept on exploring random things, and I came back on the Sunday basically.
Okay. Yeah. So, guys, remote work is actually real work also, and doesn't mean that just because you're working remotely, you can spend the whole day going around and then pretend that you're still online. But yeah, I'm glad that so at least this gave you an opportunity to also meet new people and then revisit some of the places too, right? That you liked, and also explore some of these food places. And yeah, if you're looking to pick something up back, I mean, usually with a lot of these hill stations, you do have, they call them homemade chocolate, but yeah, whatever that is, but it is usually a selling point of these places that they have a lot of really delicious chocolate on sale. So make sure you grab some of them, and spices as well, like Ananya mentioned earlier. Overall, it does seem like a very relaxing trip, right? And even in terms of experiences, there's everything from, if you're looking at something more adventurous, like you're hiking or boating or other things like zip lining, etc., you have those options. Other options primarily around nature, right? Your waterfalls, your lakes, your viewpoints, and everything. And if you want to just spend time doing nothing and just take it easy, the best would be to like move someplace a little bit cut off or offbeat or far away from the city center, and like choose to stay at a hostel or someplace like that, and you could almost turn this into a workation type of experience, right? So all of those different options are available while you're visiting Kodaikanal. Another thing I don't know, probably shouldn't mention, but I'll mention it anyway. It's also infamous for, or used to be infamous for, shrooms or mushrooms as they were referred to. I won't get into the specifics because I don't want to get into trouble, but I hear a lot of fake like sellers show up that pretend to sell these to you as well. It's best to stay off of those things as well, because really you don't need things like these to enjoy Kodaikanal in the first place. But yeah, overall, definitely a lot of options for one to explore. Are there anything else that we did not touch upon, or things you'd like to mention that people could consider?
Yeah, so I think during the stay, that extended stay, basically, my highlight was just the walks that I took, just wandering around the nature, looking at the flowers and all. And in general, because Kodaikanal is also like plagued by over tourism, like a lot of cities, a lot of small towns. But what I really liked about the place was the overall awareness about the environment that was there. So basically, there's this newspaper called Kodai Chronicle. It's widely circulated, which brings for the issues that the town is facing. They have a really good, garbage maintenance policy. So, you don't get those small water bottles or the 1 liter bottles. You have to buy either a 5 liter bottle or you carry your own, like, water bottles. So I think in general, they are doing a lot, and that's commendable because I've not seen that happening in North. So I've also traveled to other hill stations, and I really like that. But there's also a lot more to be done. So at the time I was traveling, there was this talks of construction on Kodai Lake, and the citizens are so aware. They're protesting against that, and the newsletter that I just mentioned had interviews and actual campaigns against it. So it didn't actually happen as far as I know, but it was quite interesting aspect. And I think because I stayed for a longer period of time, I got to see those side of things, and talk to a lot of localites, that how much they appreciate the nature around them, and how the construction should be more mindful. So they're taking concrete steps to kind of make sure that's the case. I think that is also a big takeaway from my Kodaikanal visit, that we should be very mindful as travelers, and we should not litter the place, we should not damage it, and if possible leave it better than when we came to that place.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Because it is unfortunately a reality, right? Over tourism will happen given people have more and more disposable income, dispensable, I guess. But yeah, either way, people will travel more and more, and it's hard to stop that, but probably what's more achievable is spreading awareness and being conscious of the choices you make when traveling to such places, right? And thank you for calling that point out as well, because places like these are definitely at the mercy of tourists, doing their own bit, given that how many of them are visiting. It's definitely not something that can be solely taken up by locals or governments or whoever's in charge. It has to come from the tourists themselves too. So glad that you made that call out, and it's important for us to save and preserve places like these for future generations, and that can only happen if we are spreading awareness about these things. And I'm glad that even local initiatives and papers like the or yeah, I think it's more digital, or I don't know if they do a print as well. But yeah, Kodai Chronicle is one of them, and it has a variety of such interviews and topics it covers about Kodaikanal. So definitely check that out too if you're looking into some of the histories and backstories of the place. Thank you so much for covering off all of these beautiful things. A couple of other interesting points I came across too when I was doing my research, and I don't know if you came across them. One of them was this place called as the Kodaikanal. Let me get the right name for it. It was called as the Kodaikanal Solar Observatory. Right, so that was also believed to be like a 130-year-old solar observatory that was set up to basically do a lot more research around the sun and its implications on the climate and other events happening. And even it was set up after the events of, I think, sometime in the 1800s, there was like a great famine that happened in the region, and as a reaction to that, like initiative was taken up to research more into what can we find out based off of the activity on the sun. And there's a bunch of things, especially for somebody who's interested in astronomy, astrophysics, those types of things. You could visit. There's a museum as well, I believe. So that's something I found interesting, that one could definitely, if you have time and space on your itinerary, you could certainly cover something off like that too. But yeah, I think Ananya did a brilliant job of actually giving us a good holistic view of what an experience in Kodaikanal can be like. In terms of keeping up with your travels and other activities, is there some place you log all of these, Ananya, that people could follow your work on?
It's not very structured because there's always other things getting in the way. But I have a newsletter which is essentially about my travel, explorations about different things. So it's on Substack by the name of Amling Annie. Um, and I do share stuff on my Instagram also, like especially like my travel pictures and like experiences around that. But mainly, I'm currently kind of focusing on writing a book. It's a travel memoir,
Mm.
and that's where I'm kind of spending most of my time. I do hope it would be out next year, but let's see, because the whole process is a longer process. So I'm currently mainly writing that.
Okay, wishing you all the best for your book, and yeah, hopefully we do get to share that with listeners as well. So please keep us posted so we can tag that to the show notes. But we'll make sure to include your newsletter as well as your Instagram profile, so that people can certainly follow your work and reach out to you if they have any questions about planning Kodaikanal itinerary, right? So thank you for sharing that information. But any final thoughts, Ananya, before we wrap up the episode?
Sure, sure. Thank you for having me. I had a lot of fun talking to you about that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. The pleasure was all ours, and thank you so much for taking us to this Queen of Hills and the gift of the forest, right? Like we refer to Kodaikanal as, and showing us all the sights and the sights and scenes, and I'm sure if you go there, sounds as well. So we had a great time just exploring Kodaikanal with you, and also got a sense of how an extended itinerary for Kodaikanal can be planned. Thank you so much, Ananya, and we look forward to following your work in the future too.
Sure. Thank you so much.
That was yet another great episode on the Musafir Stories. Make sure to show us some love by sharing the podcast with your friends and family. We are on Instagram and Twitter at Musafir Stories. If you like this podcast, don't forget to check out other interesting podcasts on the IVM network. You can listen to us on the IVM podcast app or the website. Follow us on our social media. We are at IVM Podcasts on Twitter and Instagram.